Look at the size of them. Ouch. Oh, my dress is blown up. Oh my god, look at it that way.
Well, we have actually made it into queue now, and it's passed over. That is the cloud. For a bit there it was proper bang clap when the thunder started, but it's all passed off now. It's wonderful here, but we're a bit soggy, aren't we? Well, we survived Kew Gardens and we've come up here to check for damage. Surprisingly, not much. One of the dahlias looks a bit sad. Yeah, this dahlia is a little bit collapso, but it's not too bad. The asparagus ferns could do with restaking to get them back up. But other than that, it's absolutely perfect. In fact, it's magnificent up here. You know, what's it called? Petrichor, that smell after rain, and we've had so many days of hot, dry weather. You can just feel like all the plants are just sucking it up, and it's just beautiful up here right now. Got some courgettes to pick, some runner beans, a bit of beetroot, and then we'll head home for a glass of wine, I think. Had a bit of a surprise good harvest here actually. We've got frigatello peppers and yellow beans, turnips, aubergine, runner beans, carrots, courgettes, jalapenos and loads more tomatoes. Good morning. It is another sort of grey, drizzly day, which is perfect cabbage picking weather, I think. We've got one that's ready for picking in this bed, and which is a spring cabbage, and we've also got a big old round chap up in the temporary brassica cage at the other end, but there's only so much cabbage we can eat, so we're starting with this one. Is it in frame? That's a pretty good looking cabbage, I think. All right, lovely. Also, the cucamelons are coming on loads at the moment. My favourite way to have them is just frozen whole like this, and then dropped into a gin and tonic. Pretty good. A bit like a lemony cucumber. Tasty though. I'm also going to sow some chard today. I normally direct sow chard, but these chaps I want to get started now, and they're going to go into the polyhouse for the winter. So I can't sow them into the ground now because the ground is all going to get completely disturbed when I take the tomatoes out at the end of their season. So I'm going to start them off in here, pot them up, and just keep them really happy until the polytunnel is cleared. This Lucullus is the chard I'm going to sow today. Never grown this one before, but I've just been writing on my blog actually about the difference between chard and spinach. This bright lights I've just sown direct into the ground, and this perpetual spinach, which is actually a chard, I have also sown direct at the plot. Whereas this kind of spinach, the Medania, is a totally different plant altogether. So Medania is spinosa and chard is beta, like exactly the same as beetroot, in fact, Beta vulgaris, subspecies vulgaris. And the easiest way to tell is the seed. See these seeds, they look exactly the same as beetroot seeds. They're a compound seed, so you tend to get more than one germination from each seed you sow. Whereas a true spinach has got totally different seed. They are completely smooth, like this. So this is a spinach seed, a spinosa. And then it gets more confusing because the term spinach is used to describe almost anything we just use the leaf for. So things like tree spinach, that's got nothing to do with spinach, and Mexican spinach, that's got nothing to do with spinach. The word spinach is being used there just to denote that we eat the leaves. So because I've sown so much, I mean, I know you know I'm obsessed with chard, so having too much is never going to be a problem. But I'm not going to sow masses of these. I'm going to do, 12? And I'll probably pick the 6 or 7 best to put in. I mean, I say that, I always think I'm going to discard the weaklings, but I never do. They don't always end up in a home somewhere else. I'm using our own compost. This is sieved homemade compost. It's the same compost, like I said, with the others, that is absolutely full of tomato seeds. So I fully expect tomatoes to be germinating in here long before the chard does. But, you know, that's the way of things. So what was that? Lucillus? Never grown this variety before. If anyone else has, let me know. So that will be going in, I'll give that a good water, and that will be going into the polytunnel as the tomatoes come out. And there's some germinated tomato seedlings I've already taken out of this compost. Oh well. But yeah, job done. Well, morning, it's Friday and I've got turnips, beetroot and lettuce to plant out. I was fretting about, obviously I never planted it out when we had the really burning hot weather, and then I was thinking, God, now it's raining, if I plant them out they're just going to be slug bait. But look what I found when I went to go and pick them up this morning. Not cool. So I'm going to put them out. Well, before putting the beetroot in, particularly the beetroot, we realised we really had to kind of work out which beds we were going to put over to the green manure this year, because beetroot's going to be in there for quite a long time. So we've got a couple of beds which have got things which are sort of either coming to an end now, or they'll be finished by sort of September, October time, when we will need to plant the field beans. So we're just making sure that we don't do what I have done so many times in the past, which is planting long-term crops in the same bed as a short-term, so you end up with half an empty bed for the winter, rather than being able to keep all the long-term stuff together, so that we've got totally empty beds that we can put over to green manure, and or putting, you know, large quantities of compost on and just letting it go over for the winter. But anyway, we've worked it out, and what I'm going to do is, just in front of me here, I'll show you, we've got some of the courgette plants that aren't doing amazingly. They're just a bit small, a bit puny. They really suffered before we put them in. They were in their little tiny pots too long. So, but anyway, they're on half of this bed that also has chard at the other end, and now the chard is going to continue over winter. So I'm going to put the beetroot plugs in and amongst the miniature sad looking courgettes on this end. And even if the courgettes do actually end up taking off, they finish so early that it's not going to be a problem. So this bed will be one that's got things growing in it over winter. The other beds are the ones that have got the perpetual spinach in, are going to last over winter. The allium bed is going to be full over winter. Behind me, I don't know if you can see, the one that's got the main crop potatoes in that have died down just there, waiting to be dug up. That is going to be our covered bed. So we've got a cloche that we can put over, and we're going to be growing things like a bit more spinach in there. We're going to be growing lamb's lettuce, some winter lettuces, that kind of thing. So we're going to have 2 undercover areas. We've got the greenhouse, but that gets very cold in the winter. So we're going to have a cloched area here. We're going to have the polytunnel behind me, are going to be put to good use during the winter. Couple of outdoor winter beds, which are going to have the beetroot, the parsnips, the celeriac, the radicchio. What else have we got? The simidi wrapper, a lot of the brassicas, all of that that's going to stay over winter, leaving them. Every other bed we're going to clear and put green manure down. So that's the idea. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to interplant these sad courgettes with my beetroot plugs. So one of the first things I've got to do is take out all these bloody tomatoes in there. Absolutely fantastic. Also, have a look at this before I start. This is the papillo. I don't know if you remembered when I saw one of the very early vlogs, I sowed this one. It's the coriander alternative. It's really delicious. It tastes like, when you first chew it, it's a bit astringent, and then it turns into like a coriander mint hybrid. It's gorgeous. That did actually really suffer from the aminopyralid, which is, I think, what we've got problems with the courgettes in this bit of ground, but it's a bit of a shame really. I've said this before, but when you're choosing seed trays, try and look for some with really, really big holes in the bottom, because often how they break is when you're trying to force your fingers up into the hole to push out your seedlings. That's when they start breaking. So if you've got a really big hole at the bottom, your soil's not going to fall out when you're sowing the seeds, because you keep it wet and tamp it right down, so there's no danger of it falling out. But you can see how big the holes in this, it's just basically all the way through. And these polystyrene ones, well, my mum had them originally. I mean, she's had them for 30 years, at least 25 years. They just don't break. Oh, I've just seen a caterpillar trying to get through my netting. So I've just cleared the peas out of this top bed, and I'm going to be sticking these lettuces in. I always find it really funny when you're planting out lettuces. They just look the saddest things, and it takes them about a week. If they don't get got by the slugs, it takes them about a week to really sort of recover and start standing up. You can just see up in the top right hand corner there, I've got some frizzly that has just started really to sort of come up and look lively up until a couple of days ago. Gosh, just look like these, like just lying on the ground looking incredibly sad. But that's lettuces for you, they do recover. Good morning. It is another grey day, but it's not actually raining, so that's a bit of a bonus. I'm going to prune the apricot tree today. Normally you would prune the apricot tree straight after you've picked the last of the fruit. We didn't pick any fruit this year because we didn't have any. It was absolutely covered in flowers. Apricots and nectarines and peaches, etc. flower really, really early in the year, and we were hit by two quite vicious storms right early on in this year. It was Dennis and somebody else. Anyway, all of the blossom was just completely blown off the tree. So we had one apricot really low down, but the squirrel got it anyway, so we didn't have any. But normally you would prune an apricot straight after the fruit because you want it to produce some really good, strong mid to late summer growth, because that's where it's going to produce the majority of its fruit next year. And you don't want that new growth to be too soft before the cold hits, because otherwise it will get damaged. You don't have to prune an apricot tree because it produces its fruit on that new growth. It wouldn't matter if I just left it and it would carry on. The reason we prune this tree every single year is because we need to keep it in a tighter shape because of space restrictions, and also ease of picking the fruit if we get any more of it. So despite all the rain we've had outside, obviously it hasn't rained in the polytunnel, so I've just done a picking of tomatoes, got quite a few, and I'm going to give it a really good soak in here. This green thing around the bottom of this pot is actually a cane support and watering system for a grow bag. Because I don't have a great deal of soil depth in these beds in this polytunnel, I'm using it just to support canes for the chili peppers so that they don't fall over. We had a bit of a casualty this morning with this whole branch, and can you see this has just been eaten out? It's rats. They're absolutely nuts this year. I've never had so many rats before up here. And this is the supposed rat catcher. Lily. This is Lily, the allotment cat. She's absolutely gorgeous, but she's about the same size as the rats, so I don't think she's really on the case. More of a mouse catcher, she is. Well, Sunday morning and the sun's out, which is rather lovely, but it has made it really, really humid. I'm going to be doing a bit of work in the pond today. We've got blanket weed problems. Yeah, so can you see, I don't know if you can see under the surface there, all that blanket weed. Let me just put my hand in, you'll see it. It's like hair. It's like green hair in the water. And we have a real problem with it. I mean, the pond is small enough that I do just fish it out. I just do a manual job. It's a bit like the caterpillars. I have a pretty good tool, this little 3-pronged jobby, and it's just a case of putting it in there and then winding it very slowly, because I don't want to sort of rake up too much of the sludge at the bottom of the pond, and I really don't want to be catching any of the oxygenating weed or anything in there. So this works quite well, and I do it once a week, once every 2 weeks. Because it's been so sunny, it's really just basically like been a blanket weed population explosion, so there'll probably be quite a lot to take out today. But, you know, like you always should, I just take it out and leave it on the side so that anything that is living in there that I've accidentally pulled out has got a chance to crawl back in. So yeah, this is going to be my Sunday job. I mean, I've said to you before, I could stare into this pond for hours, so it's a job I quite enjoy doing. There are a lot of supposed, you know, blanket weed treatments you can put in ponds and all sorts of options like that, but really I do just find manually taking it out the best. I have heard that a bundle of barley straw is a good idea. I will get hold of some barley straw, but generally I just pull it out. I don't really want to be tipping anything into this pond. We've got so much living in here. It's just a lovely. Can you see those damson flies? It's a pair of them. There's just always something going on in this pond. Also, have a look at how much the water lily has grown. It's pretty happy, I think. It's really, I mean, it only had 3-4 leaves when we first put it in. Well, there we have another week. I'm recording this inside because it's back to absolutely tipping it down outside. I haven't been up to the allotment today yet. Just looking at the clouds. They don't look very promising at the moment. Yeah, so this week, real shame about the rats eating the tomatoes. This is going to be a bit of a thing, actually. So previously, we've always had rats at the allotment. I mean, it's an open space. They're going to be there. That's absolutely fine. I've never had a problem with them before, and they have always been in the compost heap. You know, not causing no problems, just being under there. We've never even had any problems with them, with the chickens. Up until this year, never seen a rat in the chicken house. Not once. We had one incident where they ripped the bottom out of the chicken pellet bag that was stored in the shed, but that's it. This year, they are everywhere. And I'm not just hearing it from like on my allotment site either. It seems to be across the board. I don't know if you're having problems with rats, but the rat problem has massively increased. I mean, we had a very, very mild winter. And then on top of that, a lot of restaurants and fast food places and canteens and that sort of thing, they've been shut for months. And we are right next to, we've got a school just to the side of us, and obviously their canteen has been shut. And forever they've always had those, you know, those boxes that have got, I don't know if they've got rat poison in them or what they've got in them, but they're to cope with rats, and they've always had them all over the school. So the school's obviously had them for a long time, but they've been shut, and so they've all like moved over to us, and instead of eating, you know, scraps from the canteen, they've decided they like tomatoes, which I'm not up for actually at all. And only today, girl I know on Instagram, she's had her grapes eaten. Like, no. And how does a rat dangle on a grapevine to eat anyway? Yeah, so a real bugger. We've had loads of the bottom layer of tomatoes take, I say loads, we've had about 10 maybe of the ripe tomatoes really low down, and I thought, well, yeah, the low ones, they might get them, but they won't get them higher up. But if they've eaten Danny's grapes, I mean, where will they stop? And then when I mentioned it that we've got rats, I have had so many comments from people across the country where they're just having terrible problem with rats on allotments. With they eat the sweet corn, they eat the beetroot, they basically eat everything except onions. So I'm at a bit of a loss to know what to do really, because I'm not going to kill them, I'm not going to poison them, but what do you do? Yeah, so basically the rat thing is a bugger. Yeah, I'm glad that I got the apricot tree pruned anyway. That was something that really needed doing. And another reason for keeping it small is that because, like I said, it's a really early flowerer, like the peaches and the nectarines and everything. A lot of the time, if it's still quite chilly, there's just not enough bees around, they're still kipping basically. And so I've got to go out there with the paintbrush, and if the tree's massive, I just don't have a chance to get any of it. And because it mainly fruits on the previous summer's growth, it's always going to be the fruits like the furthest possible point to try and pollinate it, so I'm not going to do that. So basically we're keeping it small. It's a beautiful tree. This is the first year that we haven't had any apricots off it. Last year we had absolutely masses, year before tons. We were just really unlucky with the weather this year when those storms hit. That's a real shame, but fingers crossed for next year. Although I don't know if you know Bob Flowerdew. He's well, he's a gardener obviously, and he is on Gardener's Question Time, but I heard a while back he was saying that it is a bit dicey growing apricots in the UK, or peaches or any of those kind of fruit, but they're so good that if you only get fruit once every 3 years, it's worth more than having any other fruit tree on your plot, and I totally concur. There's nothing quite like the taste of the apricots off that tree. It's something else entirely. So next week, the weather is supposedly improving. Well, improving from my point of view rather than the plants. The plants are loving it. In fact, more than the plants loving it, the grass growing like a centimetre a second, basically. So poor mum's been out there with the strimmer, just constantly going up and down the paths like a bee. But that's positive. And our soil is so sandy. It's basically just sand with a mulch on top. We're really going to be pushing the green manure thing this winter. It's something that we just really need to do. I mean, we were really stung by the organic compost the organic horse manure that we brought in this year. We've been using it for years, but previous years we've dug it in, and the soil microbes have lessened the effect of what we now realise is the aminopyralid that is in the horse manure. So that was a bit of a nightmare, and when we started putting it on as a mulch, it was really affecting the plants way more, which is how we identified that that is actually what the problem is. It's not in all of the compost, it was in really isolated bags. So we're trying to think of alternatives. We're making a lot of leaf mould this year to try and get, like I say, the soil's really sandy, so we're trying to up the organic matter in the soil. So we're doing a lot of leaf mould. We're going to be doing a lot of green manure, like I say, that is going to be cut down and left on the surface. Yeah, anything that's going to give us just a bit more organic matter, and we're going to be using our own compost. We're really trying to up our game on how much compost we can produce, because that's going to be a way to really solve that problem. I mean, you have to make a vast quantity of compost to do that, but we're working on it. If anybody's got any resources on that, proving the structure of the soil and really getting that organic matter in there, I'd really appreciate you shunting them my way. That would be brilliant. Got quite a lot of bigger jobs to do next week. I've got to get a load of posts in the ground on the side of the allotment that runs alongside the path. So I've got to dig out a lot of the space in front of the polytunnel because we're expanding those beds and reducing the amount of space taken up with grass on the plot. We're really trying to maximise our growing area for next year. Yeah, that's about it from me. I'll see you on Instagram in the meantime, and if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Yeah, so I hope you all get some sunshine as well next week, and I will see you then.